The large ship landed softly on the special pad built just for this moment. Its silver hull gleamed in the morning sun. 10 alien students stood at the viewing windows, looking down at Earth for the first time. They were the first ever group in the Galactic Educational Alliance's exchange program with the newly discovered planet. "Remember your training," said Sorla, their unofficial leader. "This is a Class 5 Deathworld. Stay in your protective suits at all times." The other aliens nodded. They all came from different worlds and looked different from each other. Some had scales, others had fur, and a few glowed softly. But they shared one thing: fear of Earth. "The gravity will crush you if your suit fails," warned Taz, a small blue alien with 4 arms. "And the oxygen is like poison gas to half of us." "Don't forget the water that falls from the sky," added Meep, who resembled a tall plant with eyes. "They call it rain, and it happens without warning." The ship's computer announced landing was complete. The aliens put on their helmets and checked each other's seals. They had trained for this for months, but nothing could truly prepare them for a Deathworld. The door opened with a soft hiss. A group of humans waited on the landing pad. They wore simple clothes, not the battle armor or protective gear the aliens expected. One human stepped forward, smiling. "Welcome to Seoul National University," he said. "I am Professor Taho Kim, head of the Interspecies Relations Department. We are honored to be part of this historic exchange program." Sorla stepped forward carefully, testing the gravity with each step. It was heavy, just as they were told, but their suits compensated well enough. "We thank you for your welcome," Sorla said through the translator. "We have studied much about Earth, but have many questions." Professor Kim nodded. "That's why you're here. To learn about us as we learn about you. These students will be your guides during your stay." 5 young humans stepped forward, each smiling in what the aliens hoped was a friendly gesture rather than a display of teeth before an attack. "This is Jisoo," said Professor Kim, introducing a female human with short black hair. "And here are Dongyun, Hyunjin, Minha, and Juno. They've all been trained about your home worlds and your needs." Jisoo bowed slightly. "We've prepared special rooms for you in our science building. They can be adjusted to match the conditions on your home planets." The aliens relaxed slightly. At least these humans understood their needs. As they walked to the building, a loud bang came from nearby. All 10 aliens activated their emergency shields at once, creating a circle of glowing barriers. The humans simply turned their heads toward the sound. "Just a car backfiring," explained Hyunjin calmly. "Nothing dangerous." "You didn't take cover," said Taz, amazed. "How did you know it wasn't a predator attack?" The humans looked at each other, trying not to laugh. "We don't really have predator attacks on campus," said Dongyun. "The most dangerous wildlife here is probably squirrels, and they're only after your snacks." The aliens deactivated their shields slowly, embarrassed. This was going to be harder than they thought. Inside the science building, Professor Kim showed them to their rooms. Each had been carefully designed based on data from their home worlds. "Classes start tomorrow," he said. "Today, rest and adjust. Your guides will take you on a small tour of the campus when you're ready." After the humans left, the aliens gathered in Sorla's room. "Did you see how they just walk around in the open air?" asked Meep. "No protection at all." "I heard humans can drink water that would dissolve our skin," said another alien. "And they can break bones and just heal them without medical tanks." Sorla looked out the window at students walking across the green campus lawn. Some sat directly on the ground. Others played with a flying disc. "We've all heard the stories," Sorla said. "But now we get to see if they're true. If humans really are the toughest species in the galaxy, we need to understand why. And how to defend against them if needed," added Taz quietly. Sorla nodded. "Let's hope it doesn't come to that. For now, we are students and Earth is our classroom." Outside, dark clouds began to gather. The aliens didn't know it yet, but their first Earth storm was coming. and with it, their first real lesson about why humans called this dangerous planet simply home. The dark clouds that had gathered the previous evening now released their water. Rain fell in heavy drops across the campus of Seoul National University. "What is that sound?" asked Meep, pressing their face leaves against the window of the safe room. Xorla joined them. "It's the rain starting. Remember the briefing. Water falling from the sky is normal here." The aliens gathered at the windows, watching the rain with a mix of fear and wonder. Humans ran across the open spaces, some holding small shelters over their heads, others simply getting wet. "They let it touch their skin," said Taz in disbelief. "Water that falls through their toxic atmosphere." A knock at the door made them all jump. Jisoo entered with the other human guides, all slightly wet from the rain. "Good morning. Ready for your first day of classes?" she asked brightly. Xorla pointed to the window. "But the sky is leaking." Jisoo laughed. "It's just rain. We brought you these." She held up several umbrellas. "They'll keep you dry while we walk to the science building." The aliens looked at the umbrellas with suspicion. "You want us to go outside now?" asked Taz. Dongyen nodded. "Classes don't stop for a little rain. Don't worry, we'll walk you through it." After much convincing, the aliens put on their protective suits and followed the humans outside. They walked in a tight group, jumping at every thunder crack. Minha held an umbrella over Meep, who kept making small distressed noises as water droplets bounced near their feet. "How often does your planet do this?" asked Xorla, carefully watching where they stepped. "About 108 days per year in Seoul," said Hyunjin. "More during monsoon season. And you just live with it." Taz couldn't believe it. "We even enjoy it sometimes," said Juno, smiling. "Rain helps plants grow and cleans the air." As they crossed the main square, a small brown creature darted across their path and ran up a tree. 3 of the aliens activated their emergency shields instantly. A 4th one jumped behind Donghyun for protection. "Threat detected," shouted one alien, pointing a sensor at the tree. "Wild animal." The humans tried not to laugh. "That's just a squirrel," explained Jisoo calmly. "They're harmless." "Well, unless you're a nut." The aliens didn't get the joke. They stared at the squirrel, which stared back while chewing on something. "That creature is free to roam among you?" asked Meep, horrified. "What if it attacks?" "It weighs less than a kilogram," said Hyunjin. "Even if it wanted to hurt you, which it doesn't, it couldn't do much damage." The aliens didn't look convinced. They kept their distance from the tree as they continued walking. Inside the science building, they met Professor Kim. He stood beside a human female with gray hair and glasses. "This is Professor Subin Baek from our biology department," he said. "She'll be teaching comparative xenobiology this semester." Professor Baek smiled. "Today we'll discuss how different species adapt to their environments. I'm particularly interested in how you all perceive Earth compared to your home worlds." The class was fascinating but strange for the aliens. They sat in special seats designed for their different body types, while the humans sat in normal chairs. When Professor Baek showed images of Earth's diverse environments, from deserts to oceans to mountains, the aliens were shocked. "You're saying humans can survive in all these places?" asked Xorla. "With the right equipment for extreme conditions, yes," said Professor Baek. "But humans live naturally in most of Earth's habitats." "Without protective suits?" asked Taz. "Without suits," confirmed Professor Baek. "Though we do wear clothes for comfort and social reasons." After class, the human guides took the aliens to the cafeteria. This was another challenge. Each alien had specific dietary needs, which the cafeteria staff had prepared for. But watching the humans eat was disturbing. They put dead plants and dead animals in their mouths, whispered Meep to Xorla, sometimes in the same bite. "And they exposed their food to the open air before eating it," added Taz, "with all the microbes floating around." Jisoo noticed their distress. "Is everything okay with your food?" Xorla nodded politely. Yes, we are just observing, learning about humans. Well, we want to learn about you too, said Jisoo. That's what this exchange is all about, right? As she spoke, the rain outside stopped and sunlight broke through the clouds. The sudden brightness made the aliens blink. Your star is so bright, said Meep. How do you not burn? Our skin produces melanin for protection, explained Dongyun. But we do burn if we stay out too long without sunscreen. You burn and still go outside. Taz couldn't understand it. The humans exchanged looks. This was going to be an interesting semester. 1 week after the aliens arrived on Earth, Professor Kim called them to a special meeting. The human guides were already there, wearing strange clothes. They had thick boots, pants made of sturdy material, and carried small backpacks. Good news, said Professor Kim with a big smile. Today we're going on a hiking trip to Bukhansan National Park. It's a perfect way to see more of Earth's natural environment. The aliens looked at each other with worry in their eyes. What is hiking? Asked Forla carefully. Walking in nature, explained Jisoo. Up a mountain. It's fun. Mountain? Squeaked Meep. Those rocky things that stick up from the ground. The ones with dangerous heights and falling rocks. Dongyun nodded. Yes, but don't worry. It's a beginner trail. Very safe. The aliens didn't look convinced, but they didn't want to seem weak in front of the humans. They put on their protective suits and added extra emergency beacons. 2 hours later, they all stood at the base of Bukhansan Mountain. Trees grew everywhere. Birds made strange noises. The wind moved leaves and branches in ways that made the aliens nervous. Stay close to your guides, said Professor Kim. They know the trail well. The group started walking up the path. For the humans, it was an easy hike. For the aliens, even with their suits helping against Earth's gravity, it was hard work. How much farther? Asked Taz after 20 minutes. We're only about 1/10 of the way there, said Hyunjin cheerfully. The aliens tried not to show their shock. How could the humans do this for fun? As they continued walking, Dongyun stopped suddenly and knelt down. He picked up a rock and looked at it closely. Interesting, he said. This is granite with a high quartz content. As he turned the rock in his hand, its sharp edge cut his finger. The aliens watched in horror as red blood appeared. Your damage, cried Meep. We must return to the university for medical help. Dongyun looked confused. Then he laughed. It's just a small cut. He pulled a tissue from his pocket, wiped the blood away, and kept walking. But the wound is open to the air, said Taz, following behind. Aren't you worried about infection? Death? For a tiny cut like this, Dongyun shook his head. My immune system can handle it. Besides, I washed my hands before we left. The aliens couldn't believe what they were seeing. On their worlds, any break in the skin was a serious medical emergency. They continued climbing. The path got steeper, and soon they reached a section where they had to use their hands to climb over some rocks. The humans did this easily, reaching down to help the aliens up. Careful here, said Minha, offering her hand to Sorla. The rocks can be slippery. Sorla stared at her hand. You want me to let you pull my entire body weight. Won't that damage your arm joints? Minha smiled. I'm stronger than I look. All humans are. With hesitation, Sorla took her hand. Minha pulled them up with ease, not even breathing hard. The other aliens watched in amazement. When they reached a flat area halfway up the mountain, they stopped for a rest. The humans took out water bottles and snacks from their backpacks. The aliens sat on special mats so they wouldn't touch the ground directly. Look at that view, said Juno, pointing to the city below them. The aliens had to admit it was beautiful, even if terrifying. They could see so far from this height. How often do humans fall from these mountains? Asked Sorla, staying far from the edge. It happens sometimes, said Jisoo. But most hikers are careful and stay safe. You climb these dangerous places even though people die here. Meep couldn't understand it. Life always has risks, said Dongyun, looking at his small cut, which had already stopped bleeding. But that doesn't mean we should hide from experiences. As they prepared to continue hiking, a bird flew very close to the group. Two aliens activated their shields in panic. The humans tried not to laugh. Sorry, said Taz, embarrassed. On my world, flying creatures are always dangerous. It's okay, said Hyunjin kindly. Earth must seem very scary to you, but I promise you're safe with us. The aliens weren't so sure about that, but as they continued up the mountain, following their fearless human guides, they were starting to understand why humans were considered the most adaptable species in the galaxy. 2 weeks after the hiking trip, Professor Kim announced a weekend trip to the coast. The aliens were both excited and nervous. None of their planets had large open bodies of water like Earth's oceans. We'll stay at a small beach house, explained Jisoo as they rode in a large van. The weather should be perfect for seeing tide pools. The van windows showed green hills that soon gave way to glimpses of blue water. The aliens pressed their faces to the glass, amazed by the endless ocean. So much water, whispered Meep, and it moves all by itself. They arrived at a small house on a cliff above the beach. After settling in, the humans led the aliens down a path to the shore. The aliens walked carefully, their suits giving warnings about the salt in the air. These are tide pools, said Hyunjin, pointing to small pools of water among the rocks. They're full of life. The aliens bent down to look. Tiny creatures moved in the clear water. Plants waved with the gentle movement. It was beautiful and strange. On my world, water is kept in sealed tanks, said Taz. It's too valuable to leave in the open. While they explored the tide pools, none of them noticed the dark clouds gathering far out over the ocean. Donghyun was the first to spot them. Weather's changing, he said, pointing. Those clouds are moving fast. The humans checked their phones. Their faces grew serious. A storm is coming, said Minna. It wasn't in the forecast this morning. We should head back to the house, said Jumno, already gathering his things. The aliens looked at the approaching clouds with fear. They remembered the rain at the university, but these clouds were darker, bigger. How bad will it be? Asked Thorla. Just a thunderstorm, said Jisoo. But we should get inside before it hits. They started back up the path, but the storm moved faster than they expected. When they were still 1 kilometer from the house, the first heavy drops began to fall. Run, called Hyunjin. The humans started jogging up the path. The aliens tried to keep up, but their suits were not made for running in Earth's gravity. The rain fell harder. Wind began to blow. We can't make it to the house, shouted Taz as lightning flashed in the distance. Activate emergency beacons. Several aliens reached for the beacons on their suits, but Hyunjin stopped them. No need for that, she said firmly. There's a shelter ahead, just 200 meters. We can make it. In this, Meep pointed at the sky, which was now pouring water. It's not safe. It's just water and noise, said Dongyun. Follow us closely. The humans formed a protective circle around the aliens. They moved steadily up the path, which was now turning muddy. The storm grew worse. Wind pushed at them. Thunder crashed overhead. This is what you call just a storm, shouted Sorla over the noise. Medium-sized at worst, called back Junho with a smile. Keep moving. They reached a small wooden shelter just as hail began to fall. Small ice balls bounced on the ground around them. The aliens were in shock. Your sky is throwing solid water now. Taz couldn't believe it. Inside the shelter, the humans shook water from their hair and clothes. They seemed more annoyed than scared. Sorry about this, said Minna, wringing water from her jacket. The forecast said clear all weekend. The aliens huddled together, watching the storm through the open sides of the shelter. Lightning lit up the sky. Thunder shook the ground. "How are you all so calm?" asked Thorla. "This is terrifying." "We've all seen worse," said Jisu with a shrug. "This will pass in an hour or so." "And until then?" asked Meat nervously. Dongyun pulled a small container from his backpack. "Until then, we have cookies. Anyone hungry?" The humans sat down on benches, casually sharing food while a thunderstorm raged around them. Slowly, uncertainly, the aliens joined them. They were starting to understand that to humans, even nature's fury was just a minor inconvenience. As they ate cookies in the storm, the aliens exchanged looks. What kind of species treats deadly weather as a chance for snacks? The answer was becoming clear: a species that evolved on a death world called Earth. 1 month into the exchange program, the aliens were settling into life at Seoul National University. They still wore their protective suits, but they no longer activated their shields every time a bird flew overhead or a door slammed. That morning, they sat in the special laboratory that Professor Kim had set up for the xenobiology class. The room had been designed to let the aliens and humans work together safely. "Today we will compare cell structures," said Professor Bake, writing on the board. "Each team will look at samples from different species." The aliens and humans paired up at workstations. Sorla worked with Jisu, carefully handling a small glass slide with cells from a human plant. "Your plants are so different from ours," said Sorla, looking through the microscope. "Ours store energy in purple sacs, not green ones." Suddenly, the floor shook. It was 6 weeks into the exchange program. A special event was announced. Seoul National University would host an interspecies sports tournament. The games were modified to be fair for all participants. "This will be fun," said Professor Kim during the announcement. "A chance to learn about each other through friendly competition." The aliens weren't sure about this. On their home planets, physical contests were rare. Most of their species avoided unnecessary energy use or risk of injury. "What games will we play?" asked Sorla with concern. "Modified versions of Earth sports," explained Juno. "Basketball with lower hoops, soccer with walking only, and relay races with adjusted distances." On the day of the tournament, the university gym was decorated with flags from Earth and the aliens' homeworlds. Teams were mixed, with humans and aliens working together. The first event was modified basketball. The humans showed the aliens how to bounce the ball and throw it through the hoop. The aliens tried, but their movements were slow and careful compared to the humans. "Like this," said Juno, demonstrating a shot. He jumped slightly and tossed the ball. It went through the hoop easily. The aliens watched in amazement. Despite the lower gravity settings in their suits, they couldn't jump like the humans did. During the game, Juno ran across the court, caught a pass, jumped, and scored a point. To the humans, it was a simple play. To the aliens, it looked impossible. "How did you move so fast?" asked Taz when Juno returned to the bench. "That wasn't fast," said Juno, confused. "I was just jogging." As the game continued, Sorla tried to catch a pass but missed. The ball bounced away. Both Sorla and Juno ran for it. They collided and Sorla fell to the floor. Everyone froze. The aliens thought Sorla might be seriously hurt. Collisions were dangerous on their worlds. But Juno immediately helped Sorla up. "I'm so sorry. Are you okay?" Sorla stood, checking their suit for damage. There was none. "I am fine. The impact was not as hard as I expected." "Still, I should have been more careful," said Juno. "I didn't mean to bump into you." This confused Sorla. "You're worried about me. But you're the one who hit something at high speed." Junho laughed. "That wasn't high speed. And I'm fine. Humans bump into each other all the time." The game continued. The aliens played more carefully after that, but they watched the humans with new interest. Humans could run, jump, catch, throw, all while dealing with Earth's full gravity, and they did it without getting tired quickly. The next event was the relay race. Each team had 2 humans and 2 aliens. The race was adjusted so aliens ran shorter distances. Hyunjin was the first runner for her team. When the signal sounded, she took off at what seemed to the aliens an incredible speed. "Is she using some kind of technology?" asked Meep, watching Hyunjin's legs move rapidly. "No," said Dongyun. "That's just how humans run." When it was Minha's turn to run, the aliens noticed something else interesting. She was slightly slower than Hyunjin, but still fast. Different humans had different abilities, just like different alien species did. After the races came walking soccer. This was easier for the aliens since running wasn't allowed. Still, the humans showed surprising skill at kicking the ball with exact force and direction. At the end of the tournament, everyone gathered for refreshments. The aliens sat together, talking quietly. "Did you see how they move?" said Taz. "They control their bodies with such precision." "And their endurance is amazing," added Xorla. "They kept going for hours." "Plus they're strong," said Meep. "Junho lifted me up after I fell, like I weighed nothing." A human student walked by and offered them drinks. The aliens took them carefully. "We're starting to understand," Xorla said quietly. "Humans aren't just surviving on a death world. They're thriving on it. Their bodies evolved to handle conditions that would kill us instantly. And the strangest part," added Taz, "is that they don't even realize how special they are." 2 months into the exchange program, disaster struck. The aliens had grown more comfortable on Earth, but they still depended on their protective suits to survive the planet's harsh conditions. After a long day of classes, Thorla noticed a small warning light on their suit. A tiny rip had formed near the shoulder joint. Normally, the suit would fix such damage on its own, but this time something went wrong. The rip grew larger. "Help," called Thorla as toxic Earth air began to seep into the suit. Suit failure. The other aliens backed away in fear. They could not risk their own suits to help. The human guides ran toward the sound of distress. "What's wrong?" asked Jisoo, reaching Thorla first. "Air breach," gasped Thorla, already feeling sick as oxygen, which was poisonous to their species, entered their lungs. "Need medical." Thorla collapsed to the ground. The warning alarms on their suit blared loudly. "Call Dr. Bake," shouted Dongyun, kneeling beside Xorla. "Tell her to bring the emergency kit for Flaxians." Hyunjin pulled out her phone and made the call. Junho and Minha cleared other students away to give Xorla space. Dr. Subin Bake arrived 5 minutes later. She carried a large medical kit and wore a serious expression. "How long has the suit been breached?" she asked, opening her kit. "About 6 minutes," said Jisoo. Dr. Bake nodded. "Let's get to work." The doctor pulled out tools and medicines specially designed for alien biology. She worked quickly, first sealing the suit breach with a special patch, then injecting medicine to counter the effects of oxygen exposure. "Will Xorla be okay?" asked Meep, watching from a safe distance. "I've done what I can here," said Dr. Bake, "but we need to get them to the medical center immediately." The humans carefully lifted Xorla onto a stretcher. As they carried the sick alien to the medical center, the other aliens followed nervously. At the medical center, Dr. Bake spoke with the alien medical team through a video call. The nearest alien medical ship was at the moon base, hours away. "We have to stabilize them until the ship arrives," said Dr. Bake. "I'll need your guidance." The alien doctor on the screen looked worried. "Our species cannot survive more than a few minutes of oxygen exposure. It's likely too late." "It's not too late," said Dr. Bake firmly. "Tell me what to do." For the next 6 hours, Dr. Bake worked nonstop. She followed the alien doctor's instructions exactly, creating medicines that had never been made on Earth before. The alien students watched through a window, amazed by her speed and focus. "She hasn't stopped once," whispered Taz. "Not even to drink water." "And she's working without a protective suit," added Meep. "In an atmosphere that's safe for her but dangerous for creating these medicines. At hour 7, Sorla finally stabilized. Their vital signs improved, and they woke up briefly. Dr. Bake stepped out of the treatment room, looking tired but relieved. Sorla will survive, she told the waiting group. The alien medical ship will arrive in 3 hours to take them for full treatment. Thank you, Doctor, said Professor Kim, who had joined the group. Your work was amazing. Dr. Bake smiled wearily. Just doing my job. How long have you been working? Asked Sorla's roommate. About 31 hours now, said Dr. Bake. I was finishing a night shift when I got the call. The aliens were shocked. 31 hours. Without rest. It's not uncommon for human doctors, said Dr. Bake. We do what's needed in an emergency. As she walked away to prepare for the medical ship's arrival, the aliens looked at each other in disbelief. She worked for 7 hours straight to save Sorla, said Taz, after already working for 24 hours. And she made medicines she had never made before, added Meep, following instructions through a video call. Humans don't just survive on this death world, said one of the older aliens quietly. They fight against death itself, for themselves and for others. That night, as the alien medical ship took Sorla away for treatment, the remaining aliens added a new note to their research. Human endurance extends beyond physical strength. Their minds can focus for incredible periods when needed, and they will use this ability to help even non-humans. 2 weeks after Sorla returned from the moon-based medical facility, Professor Kim announced a special field trip. The xenobiology class would spend 3 days in a national park for a wilderness survival test. This is a safe, controlled environment, Professor Kim explained. Rangers check the area regularly. The aliens looked at each other nervously. They had learned enough about Earth to know that safe to humans meant something very different than safe to them. Will we have full environmental suits? Asked Meep. Yes, said Professor Kim, and emergency beacons, but the goal is to learn basic survival skills from your human partners. The next day, they all traveled to Suriksen National Park. The mountains were covered in trees. Small animals moved through the undergrowth. Birds called from above. To the humans, it was beautiful. To the aliens, it was terrifying. We'll set up camp here, said Jinwoo, a new human guide who had joined them. He was strong and moved with confidence. First, we need to build shelters. Build, not use pre-made ones, asked Taz in surprise. Building them is part of the learning experience, said Jinwoo with a smile. For the next hour, Jinwoo showed them how to create simple shelters using branches, leaves, and tarps. The humans worked quickly. The aliens struggled with the physical labor, but tried their best. On my world, we would never touch wild plants, said Meep, carefully holding a branch with the tips of their fingers. They might be poisonous. Some earth plants are poisonous too, said Jisoo. But we've learned which ones to avoid. By evening, they had built 5 small shelters. The humans started a campfire and prepared food. The aliens watched from a safe distance. Fire again, said Taz, shaking their head. Humans really love playing with danger. Fire keeps us warm, cooks our food, and scares away animals, explained Donghyun. It's one of our oldest tools. After eating, they sat around the fire. The humans told stories about camping trips from their childhood. The aliens listened with fascination and horror at the casual way humans spoke about facing nature's dangers. The next morning, Jinwoo took them on a hike to learn about finding water and edible plants. They walked along a narrow mountain path. The aliens stayed in the middle, with humans at the front and back of the group. Suddenly, they heard a rumbling sound. The ground shook slightly. What's that? Asked Meep, looking around in panic. Small landslide, said Jinwoo, pointing to the slope above them. Stay back. Small rocks and dirt slid down the mountainside. It wasn't large, but it cut across the path ahead of them. When the dust cleared, they saw that 2 alien students who had walked ahead were now separated from the main group. Help, called one of the separated aliens, We're trapped. Stay calm, called back Jisoo. We'll find a way around to you. The path was blocked by fallen rocks. The only way to reach the stranded aliens was to climb up and around the landslide area. Too dangerous, said Taz. We should call rangers with flying vehicles. But Jinwoo and Jisoo were already checking the slope, looking for a safe route. We can make it, said Jinwoo. It will take hours for rangers to reach us. Our friends might panic if left alone too long. Without waiting for more discussion, Jinwoo began climbing the slope. Jisoo followed. The aliens watched in shock as the two humans moved across terrain that seemed impossible to navigate. They're risking their lives, whispered Meep. For aliens, they barely know. That's what humans do, said Dongyun. We don't leave anyone behind. 20 minutes later, Jinwoo and Jisoo reached the stranded aliens. They helped them find a safe path back to the main group. When they all reunited, the aliens had a new look in their eyes, respect mixed with wonder. That night around the campfire, Xorla finally asked the question they had all been thinking. Why aren't humans afraid of their own planet? Jisoo thought for a moment before answering. We are afraid sometimes, but fear doesn't help you survive. Action does. We learn to respect nature's dangers, added Jinwoo, but also to face them when needed. The aliens were quiet, thinking about these words. They watched the humans tend the fire, a deadly force tamed to serve life instead of taking it. Perhaps this was the real lesson about Earth and its most successful species. The end of the semester arrived quickly. After 3 months on Earth, the alien students prepared to return to their home worlds. But first, they had to present their research findings to the Galactic Educational Alliance. Important officials had traveled to Earth for this special event. The presentation hall at Seoul National University was filled with humans and aliens. Professor Kim welcomed everyone and introduced the exchange students. Xorla stepped forward first. They no longer trembled when walking in Earth's gravity. When we came to Earth, we expected to study why it's called a Deathworld, began Xorla. We planned to document its many dangers. The audience nodded. This was the original purpose of the exchange program. Instead, continued Xorla, we learned something much more important. Taz joined Xorla at the front. We discovered that Earth isn't just dangerous because of its environment. It's dangerous because of what that environment created. Humans. The room grew quiet. Some of the Alliance officials looked worried. Was this going to be a warning about the threat humans pose to the galaxy? Meep stepped forward next, carrying a small device. We recorded hundreds of observations during our stay, but not of storms or earthquakes or predators. We recorded instances of human behavior that no other species would display. Meep activated the device. A video began to play on the large screen. It showed Dongyun picking up a sharp rock and cutting his finger, then simply wiping away the blood and continuing his hike. Humans heal from injuries that would kill most of us, narrated Xorla. The video changed to show Minha putting out the laboratory fire. They faced deadly dangers without hesitation, continued Taz. Next came footage of Dr. Bake working for hours to save Xorla's life. They push beyond normal endurance when others need help, said Meep. The video showed the humans running through rain, playing sports in Earth's gravity, and climbing difficult terrain to rescue stranded aliens. When the video ended, Xorla faced the audience again. We came to study a death world, but we discovered that Earth's greatest feature isn't its dangers. It's that humans evolved not just to survive those dangers, but to protect others from them too. The Alliance officials whispered among themselves. This was not the presentation they had expected. Every day, said Taz, we watched humans hold doors open for others. Offered jackets when someone was cold, added Meep. Share food when someone was hungry, continued Xorla. These might seem like small things, but they show a species that instinctively helps others survive. In our 3 months here, said Taz, we never once saw a human ignore someone in trouble, not even when that someone was an alien with completely different biology and culture. Professor Kim wiped a tear from his eye. The human students smiled proudly. Earth is indeed a death world, concluded Xorla. But humans have turned that to an advantage. They don't just endure hardship, they overcome it, and they help others overcome it too. The alien officials stood in silence, processing this information. Finally, the head of the Alliance spoke. "This is unexpected," they said, "and valuable. We have been wary of Earth joining the galactic community because of humans' physical capabilities. We feared what they might do. We should fear what would happen without them," said Xorla. "The galaxy needs humans." After the presentation, there was a small graduation ceremony. The alien students received certificates from Professor Kim. The human guides got special honors from the Alliance. As they prepared to board the ship that would take them home, the aliens said goodbye to their human friends. "Will you visit our world someday?" asked Meek to Jisoo. "Of course," she said. "We're curious about everything." Xorla approached Professor Kim last. "I have a question to ask the Alliance," they said. "Would humans consider becoming the galaxy's emergency responders? No other species could do what you do." Professor Kim smiled. "I think many humans would be honored by such a role." As the ship rose from Earth, the aliens looked down at the blue planet. What they had once seen as the most terrifying world in the galaxy now seemed different. It was still dangerous, still harsh in many ways. But it was also the birthplace of the most adaptable, enduring, and surprisingly compassionate species they had ever encountered. Earth was a death world. But humans had made it a cradle of life, not just for themselves, but potentially for the entire galaxy.